Hey guys, my name is Sarah and today I am joined by my puppy Casper. We're going to be talking about owning a Chihuahua puppy, things that you need, important things to be mindful of, and we hope that this video helps you. These are just things that I've learned over the past few months of having Casper and also in my job as a veterinary assistant. These are just tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. If you do have any questions or any other comments, I would love to hear them down below, and let's get started. Starting off with what you'll need for a new puppy, Chihuahua or otherwise, I always recommend getting a good harness for them. A harness is always a good idea because it gives them full body support. So they're getting support from underneath, the sides, and from the top. And that way you're getting kind of an even support and pressure around the entire body. Whereas if you're just having, their leash onto their collar, if they pull, they're pushing on their trachea. And that's a lot of pressure, especially for these little guys. The next thing would be some good reusable food and water dishes. Anything ceramic, stainless steel that's nice and washable is always great. If you can get a raised dish, it does make it a little bit easier for them when they're eating because they do tend to eat pretty quickly. And that does help them digest a little bit better as well. If you have a Dollar Tree near you, I always recommend stopping there. I did find a little flashlight that clips right onto his leash, and it does have poop bags that can go inside of it. That's super helpful for the nighttime because, especially with how tiny he is, I always want to make sure that I can see him when he's going potty. And I always tell people, even if it's weird, just watch your dog's bowel movements, make sure that they look normal, and just, kind of be mindful about those things. Obviously, to go along with the poop bags, you're going to also want to get some pee pads, especially for these guys. If you have really harsh winters near you, they're probably going to give you some trouble with going potty outside in the snow. So God forbid, if you have to use pee pads in the winter, it's just good to have. Or I always recommend too putting them down when you're leaving the house for long periods. So if you're going to work all day, it's unlikely that they'll be able to hold it for a full, 8 or 9 hours just because their bladders are super tiny. So pee pads are always good to have. We've obviously got to have something nice and comfortable for their little bodies. So a nice bed and some cozy blankets is always important. You can use the bed, for them to sleep in at night or just, to sleep in during the day. Totally up to you, but having a good place where they can feel comfortable is super important. Casper has just a regular dog bed with blankets in it that he uses in our living room, and then in our kitchen he has kind of like a mesh net playpen with blankets inside of it, and he'll sleep in there during the day when he is locked into the kitchen when we're gone. This next one is a little bit controversial. I know everybody has kind of different opinions on it, but I would recommend getting a crate if you can. He does sleep in a crate at night when we're sleeping in our bedroom, so the crate is right next to our bed. It's actually just a regular dog carrier that I just put blankets and stuff in and made it into a crate because he's so tiny that it works for him. The first couple nights of crate training, any dog owner will tell you it's terrible. It's heartbreaking. It's hard to hear them cry. But if you give them those first couple nights, they will adjust. And by the second or third night, he slept all the way through. He did have a few accidents here and there, but not a huge deal. You just take everything out and wash it. And now he can sleep a full 8 to 9 hours in there, no accidents, and not a peep. He doesn't cry at all. He just walks right in. I shut the door and he sleeps in there. Some people really love sleeping next to their dog at night. I totally get that because if I could sleep next to him every night, I absolutely would. I honestly have him sleep in the crate due to his size, just because it's really hard to sleep a full night with this little thing next to you and you're constantly worrying, did he fall off the bed? Did he have an accident? Did I roll over onto him? So the crate is more so for his safety than anything else. Lastly, and obviously most important, is going to be their diet. We want to make sure that we're feeding them really good, high quality foods. There are really good kibble options out there if you want to go the kibble route. I know that, I think it's Hill Science Diet has the small pellets. So those are really good for small, like toy breeds. Royal Canon's another good brand, Purina Pro Plan. For Casper, he does have some food and skin allergies, so we have him on a more natural diet. He eats the Dr. Harvey's dehydrated formula that already has the meat mixed into it, so you just add water and it kind of rehydrates it. He does really well on that. Diet is a personal preference. There's so many different options out there, so just do your research, see what works best for your budget, your lifestyle, and your pet's individual needs too. So we're going to move on to the pros and cons section of this video. So these are pros and cons of this specific breed, things that people tend to like, things that people don't like, and I just want to kind of talk about them and shed some light. Pros are going to be, obviously, you've got a tiny little portable bestie. So it's so much fun taking him places with me. We have a little satchel that kind of goes over the shoulder. I'll pop him in there. We'll go for car rides, we'll get coffee, go to friends' houses, visit. Anywhere you take him, everybody's always just astonished by how small and cute he is. And they really seem to enjoy, meeting him, and he loves going places and meeting people too. So I think that's a great thing, and it's also great for just getting him accustomed to being around different people and going places with me. The next pro is that they are incredibly cuddly and loving. If he could lay in my arms 24/7, I'm pretty sure he would. They love to just be near their people. They love to cuddle up with you, be underneath a blanket. It's the definition of a Velcro dog. The next pro is that they're very attentive. So if you want a dog that's independent, this is not the dog for you. No matter what I'm doing, whether, laundry, chores, even when I'm vacuuming and he's scared of the noise of the vacuum, he's still literally right next to me, just watching me. They want to know what you're doing 24/7 because you're their person. You're their guidance in the world, and they just want to know everything. Another pro is that due to their compact size, they can be a little bit more cost effective than other breeds. Monthly costs like, bathing, things like that, especially short coat Chihuahuas, they typically don't have to go to a groomer and get a haircut. I'll just bathe him at home once every 1 to 2 months, and he does really well with that. And then obviously the food costs too. He doesn't go through a ton of food in comparison to what a Shepherd, a Lab, a Great Dane would eat. He eats a very minimal amount compared to that, so they can be cost effective in that regard. To our cons, these are things that people don't like about the breed. Obviously the first would be that they are barkers. I would say he doesn't bark necessarily more than dogs of other breeds that I know and that I've seen. He'll bark if somebody comes to the door. If he hears like a knock at the door, or if there's somebody brand new in our house, he'll bark at them while he's sniffing them, licking them, the whole thing. Like he's happy to see them, but he does bark to let us know that it's a new face. He does sometimes bark at our cats when he's in play mode and he's kind of telling them like, hey, I want to play with you. But other than that, I don't find that it's excessive. There's a lot of loud noises around us. There's trains near us, there's a fire department alarm that goes off, and he doesn't typically bark at those things. So a lot of it is really just dependent on the individual dog, not necessarily the breed in my opinion. But as a whole, Chihuahuas can be a little bit louder than some other breeds, so that is something to bear in mind. The next con for some people would be the separation anxiety. So for people who work really long shifts or people who like to travel, this can be a little bit tricky just because they thrive off of being near you. All they want is to be around you all the time. So they can sometimes have a hard time if you're gone for extended hours. For some people, another con can be that they shiver a lot. This can go hand in hand with them not doing very well in super cold climates, but even without that, sometimes they'll just shake for seemingly no reason. I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing. I think it just means that they need a little bit more confidence and reassurance from you, just to let them know that everything's okay and there's no reason to be nervous. The cold though, that can be tricky, in terms of potty training, but just making sure that they're bundled up and that they do have the chance to get, somewhat adjusted to those colder temperatures. I think that these are things that can be dealt with pretty easily. These are some stigmas that I have heard in regards to Chihuahuas. I'm going to tell you my opinion on them as somebody who owns a Chihuahua, but also somebody who works with Chihuahuas for my job too. first misconception would be that they hate men. I don't really know where this one comes from, to be honest with you. I think maybe it comes from the idea that they only like one person, or they gravitate towards one person, and maybe that person tends to be a female in most cases. But I do find that Chihuahuas can love just about anybody. And I would say that, yeah, they gravitate towards one person. I definitely would say I'm his go-to, but he still absolutely loves my boyfriend. He loves my dad. He loves our friends who are males who come over to the house. And he will give anybody kisses, cuddles, hugs. So I don't think that gender really plays a huge role. I think it does just come down to the individual animal, their experiences early on in life, exposure, if they've had any bad experiences with a certain type of person, things like that. I think those are all things that play a bigger role in what kind of person an animal likes versus just, does this breed like guys or girls? He's getting a little antsy, so I'm going to put him down in my lap now. The next misconception is that they are aggressive. I will say they are spicier than some other breeds, but I think a lot of this is just not having proper exposure when they're young, which is why I always recommend people, no matter what kind of dog you have, when you have them as a puppy, touch their feet, touch their ears, play with those areas, get them used to having those areas touched, because eventually they're going to need an ear cleaning and a nail trim, or, they're going to have to be, handled in ways that maybe they're not typically used to being handled at home. And that can be tricky for you. It can be scary for them. It can be difficult for the people who have to, perform those services, and we always want it to be as comfortable for them as it can be. It's also important to remember that aggression just comes from fear. So a lot of times when we see aggressive animals, it's not that they're choosing to be bad, it's just that they're afraid, and that's just how they show it. So a lot of times with Chihuahuas, sometimes we'll see aggression if they had a difficult upbringing, if they've been attacked by a larger dog in their past, if they've been manhandled by, children, or, people who didn't really know how to deal with a small breed dog. So I think it's really important to remember that a lot of times a behavior is a reflection of an experience or, an emotion that they're having. It's not as simple as this animal's aggressive or this animal's bad. Another misconception would, like I said earlier, be the constant barking. That's another thing that I think is just dependent on the animal, not necessarily on the breed. Just encourage people to reward the behaviors that you want to see and just re-guide the behaviors that you don't. But just remember, dogs bark. It's just what they do. It's how they communicate with the world. And there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but it is something that we just have to work on with them. Next is something that I really want to educate people on, and that is health concerns and important things to know about the breed. First thing would obviously be that they're extremely fragile due to their size. So with how small they are, it's just important that when you're carrying them, you're fully supporting them, and just remember that they can slip and fall and get hurt really, really easily, probably a lot easier than, a larger breed dog. An example of this, a couple months ago, I had gotten home from work. Casper was super excited to see me, so I scooped him up. He was on my chest, wiggling around, all excited, giving me kisses. He fell and jumped off of my shoulder, fell onto the hardwood floor, onto his side, very, very hard. It was probably the scariest moment of my life. He kind of went into shock, and it was like his limbs wouldn't move. Like he would not move his front or his back legs. And in that moment, I just thought, my dog is paralyzed. I didn't even know what to do. Even, and working in the job that I work in, it was like all of the knowledge had just left my brain, and I was just in panic mode. So we went right to an emergency clinic, and thankfully, in the 15-minute drive that it took us to get there, he had already gotten back to his normal self. Just keep in mind, accidents happen so easily, even, to the best of us, and it's just really important to be careful and be mindful that this is a creature who is very small and very vulnerable. Another important thing I would like to mention, this is more related to veterinary care. To their size, I would always recommend separating their vaccines. So for puppies, they're always going to get vaccinated in a series for their first distempers. So that would be their distemper parvos. So they typically will get their first distemper, second, and then depending on where you live, sometimes they'll get a third distemper, then they'll get their rabies vaccine. And then if you choose to get the Bordetella vaccine, which is the kennel cough, to protect them from the kennel cough virus, then that would be another one. But due to the tiny size of Chihuahuas, I always say if you can separate the vaccines, just do it. Just because vaccine reactions are really scary, and small breeds like this are really susceptible to having vaccine reactions, or just even having mild, irritations or discomfort from vaccines. So just something to be mindful of, to have them done at separate visits, and something that you can discuss with your veterinarian too when you bring them in. Common health ailments for these guys would include a collapsing trachea, a luxating patella, and heart disease. So let's dive further into those. Collapsing trachea refers to the trachea that sits right here. So that is how they get air in and out of their bodies. If you've ever heard your dog make almost like a reverse sneeze or a honking noise, that is the rubbing of the trachea together from them sucking in too much air at once. And that's pretty common with Chihuahuas. Casper will do this sometimes if he's playing super hard or he gets really, really excited if I'm just getting home. A lot of times it's harmless. It stops itself within 10 seconds, and that's really it. What you can do too is just lightly massage their neck right here. That usually will encourage them to swallow, and then it helps them regulate their breathing, and the trachea will, open back up to normal size. And we say that the trachea is collapsing. That usually just means that it's a chronic issue, so it's happening over and over again with minimal triggers. So if you're noticing that your dog is honking, or it sounds like they're kind of breathing too quickly or struggling to breathe, and it's happening multiple times a day, or there's a pattern of it, definitely bring this up with your veterinarian, and just make sure that they're getting checked out. Another common issue for these guys is luxating patellas. So this refers to their kneecaps. So if you hear any clicking noises in their kneecaps, or if it seems like they're limping, or they're laying weird with like one leg always splayed out to the side, that is something that you definitely want to mention. So if this was their knee and this was their kneecap, it's basically like when they're walking, it's kind of popping out of place to the side. That's kind of what it would look like. So just something to be mindful of. These things are not a death sentence. They can live with these things. It's just something that we have to kind of pay attention to and help them through. Last couple things I wanted to chat about are heart issues and dental issues. So with heart issues, usually in older Chihuahuas, we will start to see some heart issues like a heart murmur, which is where the heart beats irregularly. Or we'll see kind of heart disease or heart failure, which is basically where certain parts of the heart aren't working the way that they're supposed to. A lot of times these can be managed with just medications or just generalized support. Sometimes that's medication, sometimes it's supplements, or just yearly checkups to keep an eye on it and make sure that it's not getting worse too quickly. Other times it can mean surgery or things like that. So just something to keep in mind. Again, none of these things mean that it's a death sentence or that they can't live with it, but it is something that as an owner, I think it's important to be knowledgeable about. Lastly would be the dental disease. So they are pretty perceptible to getting, a tartar buildup and just generalized issues with their teeth. Another thing with toy breeds specifically, so, Yorkies, Chihuahuas, Pomeranians, things like that, is having deciduous teeth, which is basically just baby teeth that don't fall out when the adult teeth come in, so now they have kind of doubles. A lot of times it's harmless, but it can sometimes cause overcrowding in the mouth, which can lead to extra tartar buildup and further down the line more dental disease. So I always recommend for people with toy breeds, just ask your vet to check on their teeth when they are getting spayed or neutered. A lot of times the doctor will recommend to remove the deciduous teeth at that time, which I think is never a bad idea, just to prevent any future issues. But again, totally up to you, just something to be mindful of. So let's talk about the importance of socialization. So if you want to raise a Chihuahua who is confident, outgoing, but also still friendly, sweet, and can be trusting with people who aren't just you. I would recommend socializing them as early as you possibly can. When you get them home, give them those first couple days or a week to kind of settle in, get used to you, your routine, your scent, the sounds of your house, the experiences that they're going to have. But after that, I would say definitely start getting them accustomed to meeting other people and other animals. For me, when I got Casper, the first week or two, I want to say, we were going to our friend's house for just a little hangout, and I asked her if I could bring him. I brought him in his little satchel, and I let him kind of sniff the other dogs that were there. Something important with this is if you are going to bring them somewhere there are other dogs, make sure those dogs are not dog aggressive. Make sure that they're okay with having other dogs in their vicinity. Make sure that people are okay with you bringing your puppy. And just keep in mind that you are their protector and you're their advocate. So with how tiny they are, they need you to protect them and they need you to pay attention all the time. So I would never put Casper down next to a random large dog who has never met him before. I kind of kept him in his satchel for the entire time, honestly, and I just kind of let the dogs sniff him, let him sniff them. And other than that, he was really in my lap and kind of tucked away with me, but he still had that exposure of getting to meet people and getting to meet other animals. And if you are gonna have other people hold them, just make sure that it's a good experience for them. Encourage people to talk in softer voices. Make sure that there's treats available for them. Make it a good experience and just show them that the world isn't scary, but there are certain things that they do have to adjust to. Different noise levels, car rides, things like that, even different weather patterns. So having them, outside in different seasons, getting all those different smells, all of those things will make them confident and help them adjust to the world a lot better. The last section of this video, and arguably the most important, is a Chihuahua right for you? This is obviously a question only you can answer, but there are certain lifestyles and certain traits that I think would fit a Chihuahua the best. So we're going to talk about those. Chihuahuas are great for people who live in an apartment. I personally live in an upstairs apartment, so we really have no problems with, having him play and, play fetch and things like that. It's not super noisy downstairs just because he is so small and light. And another great thing is that he doesn't require super long walks. But if you are somebody who really is super athletic, you like to hike, you want a dog that is, gonna go on these long walks with you, I would say maybe a Chihuahua is not the best choice, just because they may have a short little walk around the neighborhood if you're lucky, but other than that, mainly they're gonna just go outside to go potty and then want to come back in and cuddle probably. But if you are somebody who is a homebody and you like to be home a lot, you like to be inside, if you're okay with an animal that just mostly wants to play fetch indoors rather than take these super long walks, then I think a Chihuahua would be perfect for you. Chihuahuas would also be great for people who are maybe a little bit older or disabled, just because of that, low need for exercise and things like that. I think it's pretty simple to keep them happy and keep them engaged. Now let's talk about who Chihuahuas maybe you wouldn't be great for. If you are somebody, like I said earlier, somebody who likes to be outside all the time, who likes to hike, who is super athletic, wants to go on long walks, then maybe a Chihuahua wouldn't be right for you, just because they are probably not going to want to do all that. But again, like I've said earlier too, every dog is different and you never know. There could be a Chihuahua out there for you that wants to do those things. If you are somebody who travels a lot, you don't enjoy being home, you like to go different places, sometimes that can be challenging with a Chihuahua just because they do want to be near you all the time. If you want to travel with your Chihuahua, I think that could still work really great, because as long as they have you, I think they would be happy. People with young children, I think it's important for them to consider the size of a Chihuahua when they're picking out a dog, just because, children don't always know how to handle animals, and accidents can happen super easily. So just be mindful of their size. If you have older children, teenagers, things like that, they would be great with the Chihuahua, as long as everybody is on the same page about, how to handle them, how to care for them, and really, things to pay attention to. That is it for our advice with owning a Chihuahua. I hope this helped you figure out if a Chihuahua is right for you, or if you already have one. I hope that you were able to enjoy the video still. If you have any opinions, questions, comments, or anything that you want to leave down below, I would love to hear it. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.